Hi, everybody. It's Peter Schiff. It's Wednesday, December 2nd, 2009. Well, another day, another record high in the price of gold. Gold is now above $1,200 an ounce. It's up about $16 an ounce as we speak. Silver is at a new high for the year. Still not a new record high. We still haven't even taken out the high from 2008. Gold stocks on the Huey were now above 500 for the first time since mid-2008. We're almost at a new all-time high in the Huey index. I think we'll be there shortly. You know, I was on CNBC this morning. You can probably see the clip on YouTube with my old friend Mark Haynes, and I try to give him a little bit of a ribbing. We have that kind of a friendly on-air rivalry going about gold, because I came on to talk about gold, and I tried to remind him of an interview that we did 4 years ago. And he kind of, saw where I was going and kind of really didn't let me go there. But if you want to see the clip that I was referring to of an interview I did about 4 years ago, in which Mark Haynes basically told me, who cares about the price of gold? I'm not buying any gold. It was still under 500, and I'm not, necessarily making fun of Mark Haynes. I mean, his attitude was very typical of the Wall Street attitude towards precious metals. I think that attitude is changing somewhat, certainly in certain segments on Wall Street. But by and large, I think that attitude of who cares about gold still is pervasive on Wall Street and on Main Street. And again, in this discussion, I mentioned the fact that a lot of my clients were buying gold. My opponent in this little bit of an on-air debate was saying that, well, your clients are sophisticated investors, and I tried to say, well, not all of them. I have a lot of small guys. I have high school students that email me they're interested in gold, and then he tried to turn that around as, it's like the shoe shine boy buying, it's a sign of a top, that it's a bubble. Well, there are very few high school students that are buying gold. It's just that the ones that are seeking me out because they find me on the internet. But the number of people relative to the population that have figured this out, that are turning to gold, it's very, very small. I agree, when the average high school student is buying gold, then maybe it'll be a sign that it's over. But when just a few very astute students figure it out, believe me, we are a long, long way from a crowded trade. We're a long way from mania or a bubble. And to remind people, you can look at my videos on YouTube going back to 2004, 2005, and 2006. They've been talking about a gold bubble ever since gold hit $400 an ounce. Here we are, 300% higher. Gold is over $1,200 an ounce, and they're still singing the same song. One day they'll be right, but that day is not here, and I don't think we're anywhere near it. Oh, and by the way, if you want to see the clip with me and Mark Haynes on Squawk Box, you can see it on this video blog. I favorited it, and it's only, actually, you can see the whole clip, somewhere, but this one clip I linked to just has that one 35-second segment where we specifically talked about gold. And also today we had the Senate Banking Committee basically voted to recommend that Ben Bernanke be reconfirmed. Now, the chairman of the Banking Committee, Chris Dodd, who is potentially my opponent in the Senate race if I'm able to win the Republican nomination, he said that he thinks Bernanke has done a fine job. He said that he has some disagreements with the Fed, although I'm not sure what those disagreements are. But nevertheless, he thinks he should be reappointed. He hasn't done a fine job. He's done a horrific job. I mean, the only reason not to reappoint him is on the slim chance that they can find somebody who would do an even worse job. It's the devil you know. But to say he's done a good job, I mean, that's ridiculous. And even the criticism from the mainstream on Bernanke is wrong, because the main criticism I see is people saying that he wasn't aggressive enough, he didn't see the problems early enough, and he didn't slash rates enough. Well, that's nonsense. First of all, he didn't see the problems at all. And had he seen the problems early, it wasn't a question of cutting rates, it was a question of raising them. That was the problem that the Fed made, not that it was too slow in cutting rates, but that it was too slow in raising them in the first place. In fact, it never should have cut them as much as it did back in 2001 and 2002. That was the problem. To continue to throw gasoline on a fire is making the fire bigger. It's not putting it out. If anything, if people want to look at an arbiter of whether or not Ben Bernanke is doing a good job as chairman of the Federal Reserve, they should look at the price of gold. And I would state that a $1,200 an ounce gold price, headed higher every day, is gold saying that Ben Bernanke has done a horrible job, because the best way to judge a central banker is what happens to the value of the currency. If the price of gold is soaring in that currency, you're doing a terrible job. If gold was at $300 an ounce instead of $1,200 an ounce, then maybe we could say that Ben Bernanke did a good job in protecting and restoring the purchasing power of the dollar. The fact that the dollar is being destroyed, that its purchasing power is being debased every day, shows you that he's doing a horrific job. Speaking about jobs, we got the ADP number today that showed, I think about 169 or some 170,000 more jobs were destroyed last month. Now, this is even more jobs than they thought were going to be lost, so that's bad news. But the media is still trying to spin it as good news. Wall Street is still trying to spin it as good news, because they're saying that we lost fewer jobs than the month before, and so somehow this is evidence that the economy is turning around. We're still losing jobs. How can that show a turnaround? Just because we lost fewer jobs the month before? If the economy were turning around, we'd be adding jobs. We wouldn't be subtracting them. The fact is, the matter is, things are still getting worse. Yes, we're not losing jobs at the horrific pace we were at one time, but there's no way to maintain that pace. I mean, if we were losing jobs at 600,000 or 700,000 a month, it'd be pretty soon nobody would have a job. So it's impossible to maintain that pace. But we're still losing jobs, which means more and more people are going to be unemployed. And ultimately, I expect the trend of declining job losses to reverse. And once again, we will see jobs being lost in increasingly higher numbers as the months progress. But to try to make lemonade out of these lemons is ridiculous and indicative of the spin that is constantly put on economic data to try to pretend that the situation is not as bad as it was, because the government and Wall Street still want everyone to think that the problems have been solved, that the crisis is over, that the economy is going to recover, when nothing could be further than the truth. The problems have not been solved. They've been exacerbated. There is a much bigger crisis coming, because whenever the government tries to solve the crisis, it doesn't solve anything. It actually prevents the market from solving the problem. It simply delays the negative consequences. It postpones them for a little bit, but in so doing it, it lays the foundation for a greater crisis to follow. And as I said time and time again, that crisis is coming. It's a currency crisis, and you can see that. Yesterday, the Swiss franc hit an all-time record high against the U.S. dollar, worth more than $1 for the first time. Gold continues to make record highs. Soon, this financial crisis is going to turn into a currency crisis, and that's when we kick this thing into a whole new gear, which is going to be horrific for everybody, which is the main reason, again, that I'm running for the United States Senate, to make sure that there is somebody in Washington that understands this, because when this problem really escalates, I need to prevent that last round of stimulus, because it will be fatal for the dollar and for our economy and for our country. Anyway, that's it for today. Take care, everybody.